It's a lower cost of all kinds of criminal activities. And so you expect people to engage in it more.
Well, you started out, as you say, you weren't at the very bottom, but you were, by any conventional understanding, you were poor. You did the kind of jobs, certainly, Barack Obama never had the need to work as a cabbie on the night shift in Philadelphia. And you became a professor at George Mason. Do we still have that level of social mobility, or are we getting into the situation of the countries that many of us thought we'd left behind, where you actually have a transgenerational underclass just mired at the bottom?
Yeah, well, I think one of the great things about our country is, and makes us unique among all nations, and that is, just because you know where a person ended up in life, you cannot be sure about where he started. That is, there's such upward mobility in our country that you don't have to start at the top. But, and matter of fact, according to the Forbes 100 richest Americans, all that's new blood. You don't find the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Goulds, and it's the Steve Jobs, it's the Bill Gates and others who are first-generation, very wealthy people. And it's a lot of income mobility. It's not like Europe. If you don't start at the top in Europe, you're not going to get to the top.
Well, hold that thought, Walter, because I want to explore that a bit with you when we come back. Because take your circumstances now and apply it today. If, say, you start off in life without a male role model in your household, if you're leading a kind of transient existence with the pillars of your family are not secure, and you're growing up in dependency and on welfare, can you jump from that rung of the ladder and get yourself up into that Forbes 500 list? We'll talk about that and other questions with Walter when we return on the Rush Limbaugh Show. One show, twice the guest host. Mark Steyn in for Rush, talking to Walter Williams about his new book, Up From the Projects, which is a fascinating glimpse at Walter's own life, and Walter's kind of intersected with key American institutions at kind of every step along the way, because you were in the Army, Walter, in tumultuous times.
Yes, I was. I was
during
drafted.
The desegregation period, and
that's right. I was drafted from Philadelphia and sent to Fort Stewart, Georgia, without a very good orientation on the Southern way of life. And so I had some adjustment problems, and and matter of fact, I was just a plain troublemaker while I was in the Army. Actually, they trumped up charges, Article 92, which is failure to obey a direct command.
Right.
And I was court-martialed, and I won the court-martial. Matter of fact, it's in the book. I forget what page it's on, but it shows the court-martial document, not guilty of all charges and specifications. And I brought charges against the company commander that court-martialed me for undue hardship on a person subject to his command. And before I could get the charges written out or processed, they shipped me to Korea.
Right. So this is like way more. You had way more trouble than any of the don't ask, don't tell guys. You basically went in there as a young hotshot and as you say, a troublemaker. But you came out. I mean, you've got I think you learned a lesson from an Army chaplain that you knew during the Korean War days. That
occurred in Korea. They sent me to this black Army chaplain, and because I was raised in hell. Matter of fact, to give you an idea, when I landed in Korea, we landed on LSTs. There was no port like it is now, and a long line of guys waiting to go through the process, and you had to fill out these personnel, give your age, your next of kin, your religion, and race in there. And under race, I put Caucasian. And this chief warrant officer asked me, he said, "You made a mistake." I said, "No, I didn't." And so I said, "I'm Caucasian." And so then he asked me, why did I put down Caucasian? Because I said, well, if I put down Negro, I'll get the worst job over here. Now, I never changed it. He probably did. But this chaplain, he told me, he says, Williams, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And my response to him, I didn't actually say it because he's an officer. I said, that Uncle Tom so-and-so. But actually, it turns out that later on, I witnessed, I agreed many years later that he was absolutely right.
Right.
And I was wrong.
Right, right. And it takes...
But the big thing, Mark, is that what happened to me, I had a lot of time by myself. I had a job and just all by myself because nobody wanted to work with me. And I was 24 years old, and I said to myself, if I don't get started soon, I'm never going to be anything. So my wife and I, we agreed, exchanging letters, as soon as I get out of the Army and we save $700, we're going to move to Los Angeles, and I'm going to go to college. Mm-hmm. And I got out of the Army July 3rd. I had my job back with the taxi cab company July 7th. And December 1st, my wife and I, we had saved $900, and we hooked up a 4x6 U-Haul trailer to my 1951 Mercury with all of our worldly possessions in it, and it wasn't even full, and we headed off to Los Angeles.
Now you bring us back to what we were talking about earlier in a way, because you have a wonderful line about Mrs. Williams in the book, and Mrs. Williams is a familiar figure until her death
yes.
to millions and millions of listeners to this show who used to love when you would talk about your wife on the show. You have a wonderful phrase there. You say she was a civilizing and humanizing influence in my life.
Oh yes, she was.
And that is really, in some sense, the big purpose of marriage when it's working, is that man is a crazy beast like you in the Army.
He's a barbarian.
He's a barbarian, and the civilizing figure is the woman who domesticates him, and as in your case, gets him to kind of get his life together and pack up and move up and make something of himself. You figured that out at 24. Thanks in part to your wife, but a lot of guys don't seem to. A lot of 24-year-olds now are still crazy teenagers.
Well, you know, Mark. My wife and I, she was very popular and very highly likable, and she's getting invited to parties, and I got invited because that's the only way they can get her is to take me, because I was not that agreeable person.
Right.
But we would get home at 1 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock at night. And you know what a young man would like to be doing at 1 and 2 o'clock at night. But I'm getting a lecture from her. She's saying, Walter, do you always have to prove that you're smarter than everybody else? Did you have to say that to the person? Well, blah, 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 blah. You could have let that go by. And I started getting lectures to kind of civilize me.
And as you say, that's actually what you need, because if you're unlucky, you don't get that at 24, and you figure it out when in the ruins of your life when you're 38 or you're 43, and time has passed you by.
That's right.
So actually, that's one of the most important things you get. How long were you married for? Walter?
We were 48 years, and if my wife had lived 2 more months, we would have been together as a couple for a half a century.
That's pretty amazing, and it is a kind of tragedy. That if you went back to your corner of Philadelphia, it will be increasingly rare to find people who are able to say that.
Oh yes, and as you were saying before we went to the break, as you were saying, there opportunities for kids to get out do not exist when the opportunities that I had, because of things like the minimum wage law, all kinds of regulations, and all kinds of labor laws that cut off the bottom rungs of the economic ladder. And
right.
Kids and young people do not have the opportunities to get out that I had.
No, a lot of things have changed, and a lot of things seem easier than they were then and fairer than they were then. But in a lot of ways, the breaks are harder. So the book is called Up from the Project.
It's autobiography.
Give us the name of the publisher, Walter.
Well, it's the Hoover Institution, and Amazon carries it. And they said they have it out of stock, but they'll be reordering it soon. But you can get it from the Hoover Institution, and if you go to my webpage, walterewilliams.com, there's a link to the Hoover Institution there.
Right, and you can also order it direct if you go to hoover.org, whose book's so excellent.
That's
Walter,
right, yes.
It's a terrific book, and if you've listened to Walter when he's sitting in here, this tells you the story, where he came from, and how he got to be who he is. Happy New Year to you, Walter, and it's been great to have you on the show.